So look, if you want to grow your wealth, your income, and increase the amount of time off, then these are the shortcuts that can help. Welcome to the Wealth Creation Podcast.
Hi, it's Dan and welcome to the podcast. So in this podcast, you'll be pleased to know I'm out of my man flu and back to feeling 100%, almost, probably 99%. Anyway, in this podcast, I want to talk to you about death. So last couple of days, found out that one of my old bosses passed away, unfortunately. And he was 59 years old. 59. Died of cancer. And for the last 7 years has been battling it. Really sad. Very upset yesterday to find this out. And it's like, death becomes all of us at some point. There is no escape plan from this. But for some people, death comes a lot earlier. And I was talking to a friend of mine and we used to work in the same company, and he was the same boss as my friend as well. That's why, in fact, I met this friend. And it's just very weird how, I'm 43 now. And you just kind of turning into this age where some people that are getting ill, and there's nothing you can do about that. I know some people go, well, diet has a big part to play in cancer, for example, but unfortunately the studies really don't represent that, really. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the studies generally don't, correct that. You can run every day, you can lift weights, and people still die of heart attacks and that kind of thing as well. So it's almost like this idea of, the one thing that we definitely know is definitely going to happen is at some point you and I are going to be dead. And actually, within less than 100 years, there will be nobody alive to know that we existed. Think about that for a second. I know this is sounding very depressing in my usual upbeat podcasts, but I need you to kind of understand this. I'm 47, and if we take the average lifespan right now, which I guess in men is 84-ish, and that's gone up. It used to be 74 10 years ago, it's now 84. In fact, I think it's 82 for men and 84 in women. Women tend to live longer. So there's an issue of the fact that at 47, times that by 2 is 87, 94. I'm halfway, at least halfway. And so I've got less time ahead than I have behind. I mean, I must admit, when I say these things, I actually don't believe that, because I think we're all going to live to 100 anyway. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a really good chance that you're going to live to 100. And we've done a previous podcast saying that the problem isn't that you die at 65. The problem is that you live till 100 and you've not got anything other than your pension, which it might be a state pension. And that's a real worry for me. Now, if we've got property, and we've got millions of pounds of property, well, how many times is that going to double over the next 40, 50 years? And those rents, how many times are those rents going to double? And we can just pay it all off and put it into a trust and pass it down to our kids. And so there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about in this podcast about death, really. The first one is, we knew somebody a couple of weeks back who just passed away. I've mentioned it in a couple of previous podcasts as well. He was 42 and he just keeled over and had a heart attack, left his wife and his daughter who's 5, and my daughter's 4. And it's like, this then struck a conversation with me and my wife. What happens if I die? At some point, I am going to die. Hopefully it's not this week, not this year, not this decade. Hopefully it's next century sometime even. But at some point, we just can't keep going on forever. Now, unfortunately for this guy, think about this. Nobody expects to die at age 42, but at some point, it might happen. What if it does? So it struck up this conversation about life insurance, and we've been researching the life insurance, and then we've been checking out the life insurance, cost per property. Because when you get your life insurance and you get your quote for it, and you're looking at the multiples of the hundreds of pounds every month that you're having to pay for an event that's very unlikely to happen. That's not to say it doesn't happen. The probability is just very low, but it's not an impossibility. Okay. So if you've not got life insurance of some kind and you pass away, you die, what happens to your family? And people go, oh, well, I don't care. I'm all right because I'm dead anyway. It doesn't bother me. Well, yeah, but if you got, your 4-year-old and then your wife has to go out and work double shifts and you have to move in from this big, nice villa into a little apartment, it fundamentally shifts what's going on in their lives. And why are we working like bastards anyway, if not to provide them with security? So one of the things that rich people do is that they buy insurance. And this is one of the things I really, really struggle with right now is it's, £400-500 a month. My goodness me. Like £6,000 a year. I can do all sorts of things with that, but if I die, paying off all the mortgages and making sure my family never has any problems with money ever again, is that worth £500? I mean, actually, when we divide it by the number of properties we've got per property, it's a tiny, insignificant amount. But it's a fact that it's this big one lump sum every single month for an event that might not happen. But it might not happen is what everybody tells themselves until it happens. And so it worries me. It really, really worries me. We're working like I say, like bastards. And in order to put our family into a more secure place, and actually we are the single point of failure. Us, humans, me and you, we're single points of failure. If we fail, if we are incapacitated, like if I'm incapacitated and not dead, then everything's fine. Bizarre as that sounds. The properties keep on paying, all the rest of it. Stick me in a room in a coma for another 50 years, everything's fine. But if I die, then there's a bigger problem because all those properties get sold. There's then tax bills for capital gains, which never even occurred to me. Of course there's tax bills when you die, plus inheritance tax and all the rest of it, if you've not got wills and all that kind of thing. And so it's really important to actually understand what you need to do if something bad happens to you, and obviously insurance. Now, poor people don't buy insurance. Only wealthy people buy insurance. Generally. Depends on the insurance. Your car insurance, you have to buy. House insurance, some people don't have at all. Appliance insurance, I don't bother with that personally, even though we own hundreds of appliances. It's not that I'm a collector of appliances, it's just we've got a lot of property. Boiler insurance, for example, we don't have boiler insurance. Because actually, we don't need boiler insurance. We replace the boilers anyway on an ad hoc basis, and we're constantly going through what's the oldest boiler and let's replace it. Bring it up to date, get serviced regularly, and so on. So we tend not to have that type of insurance. But I'm not a boiler, and I'm not a washing machine that might break down and can just replace. I am irreplaceable, as are you. You are irreplaceable. So when this guy dies at 59, I hope that he had everything in place. I mean, I don't know, but maybe he did, maybe he didn't. You would expect he would have had. And he knew about this for a long time, but 7 years. And then if he hadn't have got it in place before he was diagnosed with cancer, and then he tries to get life insurance of some kind, the premiums are much, much higher. You think the premiums are high now, I'm moaning about these premiums now, but if I find out something bad's going to happen to me, those premiums go absolutely, tenfold. So almost impossible to even manage, right? So that's the problem. So you've got to start now. And it's worth having this conversation, because who else is going to have this conversation with you? Nobody. Like, you might be 22 right now and go, oh, not me, Dan. No. Well, your premiums are even lower at age 22. Get your life insurance in place. Get your key man insurance in place so that if something happens to you, you can afford to employ a key person to come and take over that role, and it's covered by insurance. Poor people don't buy insurance, wealthy people do. And what happens is people buy nice cars instead of insurance. They go out and spend the £500. So let me tell you this as a story. When I worked at the company where this guy worked, he was my boss. And mostly we got on. He was very private school boy, kind of, went to private school, very hoity-toity kind of guy. And obviously I come in rough as you like. And he just thought I was on drugs all the time, which was just the most funniest thing, because I've never done drugs ever. And if I had, by the way, I'd just mention it, because if you do drugs, that's up to you. You're on the path to Loserville, but that's up to you, right? But for me, I just never had. But because I was working class and he wasn't, he just thought that that's what I did. I thought it was hilarious. But he taught me an awful lot as well. And so, one of the stories that I've got is that when I left that company and I started to work for Dell, at the time, I worked for Dell for 18 months, and then I left Dell and I bought a very beautiful Porsche 911, bright yellow convertible, 42.5 grand I spent on that car. Beautiful car. And, one of my other bosses, who was in between me and this other chap, he thought it was all that, and, you know what it's like. Anyway, so I'd left Dell and I pulled up next to him, and he was in his Audi, obviously, because he has to drive an Audi because he's a salesperson. Or a BMW, you know. Anyway, he pulled up at the lights, and then I pulled up next to him and looked over, and I went, "Oh, hey." And he looked at the car, his face went white. This isn't the guy that passed away, it was a guy in between. And then the lights changed, and I just burnt him off and left a smoke. And it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious anyway. He just probably thought, what a twat. And that's okay too. But, you know, one of the funny stories there, from when I left work, you know, those people go, "Oh, well, you never amount to anything." Well, actually, I did. Thank you very much. But, you know, last couple of days I've been really sad about the fact that this guy's died. And it's like, you know, it's this realization, a couple of things here. Realization that we're all going to die, none of us are getting out. So put that in place. You know it's going to happen, right? Hopefully it's not age 59 or age 42 or even age 69 or 70. Hopefully it's 102 or at least 120 maybe even. You know, we've got another 50 years. I've got another 50 years for our healthcare to improve so significantly that actually 120 is going to be the bog standard for death. As long as you look after yourself and you're not too stressed and all the rest of it. So, and I'm working on that assumption, by the way. I'm working on the assumption that I'm going to be alive at 120 or dying around that time. Because if that's true, I need to make sure that my future is one of lots of fun. Not a future that's one of lots of stress because I've not paid mortgages down, or I sold the properties, or now I have to get a job at age 99. Imagine that. That's going to happen, by the way, in the next 50 to 100 years. People are going to be working till 100. It's just crazy when you think about that. And we don't know if that's going to be true or not, but if you work on that assumption and it turns out it's never ever going to be true, then that's not a bad thing. So the first bit then is getting your insurance in place. The second part here I want to talk to you about is these little things that kind of bug us, bother us, and you know, I try and stay off news, but sometimes I jump onto the Sun website because I just want to see how other people think, how the other side sees the world, which is in a very negative way, very chavvy, very, you know, they just kind of miss the whole concept of why people invest, massively. They think it's about getting up and going to work and, you know, trouble and strife and that life should be hard, and I don't believe that whatsoever. And so that's one thing that definitely separates me from some readers, let's say, or the Express. But I do enjoy just going in and reading the comments section of the ignorance. I do enjoy that. But sometimes I pop onto Twitter, and it's just a realm of negativity, really dark abuse. I mean, just dreadful. But I like to understand where people are, and you know that this actually exists. And then, I can switch off from the news. I don't watch the BBC. We should be broken up and disbanded, by the way. Shouldn't be enforced subscription service. Imagine them forcing you to watch Netflix, or forcing to pay for Netflix even if you don't watch it. It's just wrong. It's 2019. It may have worked in the 70s, but we're not in the 70s with Jimmy Savile, and his, gang of cronies, on top of the pops. You know what I'm referring to there. So we're not in that time anymore. And the BBC knew about that. I knew about that, 10 years ago I knew about that. Because someone from the BBC told me and I didn't believe them, Anyway, let's not get onto that. But this idea of these micro things that pop into our lives and kind of upset us. So we've just had a tenant, we've got rid of him. Thankfully, he's left it in a bit of a tip. We've got to get a new carpet in place. All this stuff, he's not paid for 2 months. He was about 1,800 quid. For sometimes that could be quite upsetting and it pisses us off for sure. But if you give that too much energy, it just pisses you off for weeks and then you can't do all the other stuff. And there's a percentage of our income. It's a tiny amount, really. And there's this dichotomy there of, well, it's 1,800 quid. 1,800 quid's a nice holiday next year, or it's a credit card paid off, or it's Christmas paid for, let's say, or it's a deposit on a jet ski, or whatever, right? And I get that, but that money's gone and it's lost, and I can keep getting upset by that, or I can not. It's money that could go towards my kid's birthday party, for example. So I see it as theft. That's how I see it. But if I just stay on that and let it eat it up from the inside, it's not serving me at all. Don't get me wrong. I use the energy from that and I use that to go, that's fine. Let's go out and earn 1,800 quid. So it doesn't make a difference on our cash flow. And if you can turn that into 3,600 or 4,800 or £7,000 or whatever, then even better. You know, I'm glad he's taken his 1,800 quid and not paid it to us, because that's generated us another £7,000, let's say. But it's this idea that if you're watching all these micro events that are happening in the news, and all that happens when you do that is it's going to piss you off. And, you know, the answer is not going to be found on Facebook. Whatever the answer is that you're looking for right now, and I do think this is probably going to be one of the podcasts that we're going to do is the title of it. The answer that you're looking for is not on Facebook. And we scroll through, because that is the nature of Facebook, hoping that we're going to see something that helps us connect the dots. And invariably, that's not where we connect the dots on Facebook. So these little micro distractions, you've got to get rid of these. So number one, get all your insurances in place. Number two, make sure you've got make sure you've got a will in place. And that it's updated. I need to update mine. Number three is get rid of these distractions. You know, this guy died, he's 59, and, you know, his health would have been great towards the end, and he had this for 7 years. And it sounds like the last 7 years have been really difficult, and it's really sad, you know, that anybody has to go through that. But this is the nature of life, unfortunately. And it might happen to you, it might happen to me, and we hope that it doesn't. But we've got not a huge amount of control over whether it does or not, as we said earlier. So then, number three is, what are you spending your time being distracted on Facebook for when your family are right here, right next to you? And spend the time with them. Put the phone down, which is really hard. Don't get me wrong. You know, we've constantly got our phones in our hands. It's really, really hard because we're addicted to social media. It's crazy. Instead, put your phone down. Play bloody Barbie. Freaking Barbie, honestly. Barbie and Pepper and Paw Patrol and, you know, drives me mad. But the little one loves it. So we sit and we play, and it's really easy to pick up your phone and just check, because it's boring for us, because our brains are more grown up and not 4 years of age, you know. But for the little one, she wants to know that you're there for them. And your husband and your wife and your family and your friends, they all want to know that you're there for them as well. So you've got to try and find a way of dealing with this. One of the great ways for me was switching off news. I don't watch Sky. I don't watch BBC. I mean, we don't even get that crap here in Spain anyway. And we are literally Netflix and chill. And there's no adverts on Netflix. And we go and we watch just what we want to watch on Netflix and nothing more. And so our ability to be distracted is less. Like right now I'm reading 2 books. One's on marketing and one's on fasting, for example. What are you watching news for? Read for an hour every night. If you're going to watch Netflix for 3 hours, take an hour and read for an hour. And I'm a hypocrite here, because I actually have such a short attention span these days. I find that very difficult to do, but it's something we're definitely going to start implementing. We actually played a couple of board games last night. We really missed it. Plus I won, of course. That's always a bonus, and it's very difficult to beat my wife at these things. She's far too bright for me. So that's the third thing then, is you've got to start getting these distractions out of the way. And suddenly you find yourself having a lot more life. And then if something bad does happen to you, you can go towards the light, knowing that you've done everything and everything is in place for you to be sure that when you go, your family is safe. And this refers to both males and females, by the way. You know, we're all into equality here. And so if both the man who may be the breadwinner or the woman who may be the breadwinner, each person needs to have life insurance. So, and I'm not saying that the solution to your family's debt problem is death. That's definitely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you accidentally die, you're not leaving them in the lurch. Very, very important, I feel. So I hope that's useful for you. A bit of a downer today on the podcast, but, you know, this is life, folks. Full on, as it comes. This is what life's about. And we can learn things from the processes that we go through. Anyway, I hope that's useful for you in some way, and I hope that you can implement some of that. I hope that you do implement some of that. Please come and let me know. I'll be interested to find out. My name's Dan Latto. Catch up with you on the next one. Take care.
Hey, it's Dan here. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Please click like or subscribe to the entire podcast.